This is absolutely insane. Right now, as you're watching this video, over 5,400 aircraft flying in American skies could be grounded within days. Major airlines are in complete panic mode. Bombardier stock just crashed 9% in a single trading session, wiping out billions in market value. And it all happened because of one Trump Truth Social post last night that sent shockwaves through the entire aviation industry. What Trump just threatened to do could shut down regional air travel across America, strand millions of passengers, and trigger the biggest aviation crisis since 9/11. Stay with me because this story is developing by the hour, and what happens next could affect every single person who flies in the United States. Welcome to Capital Pulse, where we bring you the facts without the spin. Before we dive deep into this aviation crisis, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because this situation is changing rapidly and you need to stay informed. What started as a trade dispute between Trump and Canadian Prime Minister Trump-Carney has now exploded into something that could fundamentally reshape North American aviation. And the crazy part? Most Americans have no idea this is even happening. Let's start with what actually went down. Late Thursday night, January 29th, President Trump posted on Truth Social with a threat that aviation experts are calling unprecedented in modern American history. He announced that the United States would decertify all aircraft made in Canada and impose a 50% tariff on any Canadian planes sold in the United States. Not 10%, not 25%, 50%. That's a number so high it would essentially kill the market for Canadian aircraft in America overnight. But it gets worse. Trump didn't just threaten tariffs on future sales. He threatened to decertify planes already flying, specifically naming Bombardier's Global Express business jets and suggesting all Canadian-made aircraft could lose their certification to operate in American airspace. Now, you might be thinking, okay, Canada makes some planes, so what? Here's what most people don't understand. There are currently 5,425 aircraft of various types made in Canada operating in United States airspace right now. We're not talking about a handful of private jets. We're talking about narrow-body commercial jets, regional aircraft that connect small cities to major hubs, helicopters used for everything from news coverage to medical evacuation, and yes, business jets used by corporations and wealthy individuals. American Airlines relies on Canadian-made regional jets. Delta Airlines has fleets of Bombardier aircraft. These aren't luxury items that can be easily replaced. These are critical components of America's transportation infrastructure. Let me put this in perspective. If Trump actually follows through with decertification, which means these planes would lose their legal authority to fly in U.S. airspace, you're looking at immediate chaos. Routes to smaller cities that depend on regional jets would be canceled. Business travelers who rely on corporate jets would be grounded. Medical helicopters and emergency aircraft could be affected. We're talking about potential disruption to millions of passengers and tens of thousands of flights. Aviation analysts are already calling this threat more destabilizing than anything they've seen in their entire careers. And these are people who lived through 9/11, the COVID pandemic shutdowns, and every aviation crisis in between. So why is Trump doing this? According to his Truth Social post, Canada has, quote, wrongfully, illegally, and steadfastly refused to certify the Gulfstream 500, 600, 700, and 800 jets. Gulfstream, for those who don't know, is an American company based in Savannah, Georgia, owned by General Dynamics. They make luxury business jets that compete directly with Bombardier. Trump is claiming that Canada is using its certification process to block American jets from the Canadian market, so he's retaliating by threatening to block Canadian jets from the American market. It's tit-for-tat trade warfare, except the stakes are absolutely massive because the American aviation market is exponentially larger than Canada's. Here's where it gets politically interesting. Canadian Prime Minister Trump-Carney has been on an absolute collision course with Trump for weeks now. This aircraft threat didn't come out of nowhere. It's the latest escalation in a trade war that's been building since Carney became Prime Minister. Just last week, Trump threatened 100% tariffs on all Canadian goods if Carney moved forward with a trade deal with China. Carney gave a speech at the World Economic Forum in Davos, where he essentially told the world that middle powers like Canada need to band together to resist coercion from superpowers, and everyone knew he was talking about Trump. The president responded by calling Canada a country that, quote, lives because of the United States, and he revoked Carney's invitation to join something called the Board of Peace, which was supposed to be this international cooperation initiative. So we've got personal animosity, we've got nationalist trade policy, and we've got two leaders who are both politically motivated to look tough on the international stage. Carney is trying to establish Canada as independent from American dominance. Trump is trying to use economic leverage to force allies into compliance. And now the aviation industry is caught directly in the crossfire. The problem is that unlike tariffs on lumber or steel or agricultural products, where the impact is felt gradually over time, grounding aircraft has immediate, visible, catastrophic consequences. If regional flights get canceled, people notice instantly. If business jets can't fly, corporate executives who have Trump's ear are going to be screaming at the White House. This isn't theoretical economic impact. This is real-world disruption that would dominate news cycles and infuriate voters. Let's talk about Bombardier specifically because this company is at the center of the storm. Bombardier is based in Montreal, Quebec. They are one of the world's leading manufacturers of business jets and regional aircraft. The United States is their largest market by far. About 2/3 of Bombardier's sales come from the American market. Only 3% come from Canada. So, when Trump threatens to essentially ban their planes from U.S. airspace and slap 50% tariffs on new sales, he's threatening to destroy the company's business model, and the market reacted exactly as you'd expect. Bombardier stock plummeted 9% in a single day. That's billions of dollars in market capitalization evaporating because of one social media post. Investors are panicking because they know that if Trump actually implements this threat, Bombardier could face existential financial crisis. Now, there's a White House official who told Reuters that Trump wasn't suggesting decertifying planes currently in operation, only new aircraft going forward. But here's the problem. Trump's actual words on Truth Social were that he is, quote, hereby decertifying the Bombardier Global Express and, quote, all aircraft made in Canada. That's present tense. That's not talking about future certifications. That's talking about existing certifications. So you've got the president saying one thing and anonymous White House officials trying to walk it back, and nobody in the aviation industry knows what to believe. Airlines are calling their lawyers. Aircraft owners are trying to figure out if their $50 million business jets are about to become worthless paperweights. And Canada's transport ministry is scrambling to figure out what the hell is going on. The international implications here are staggering. Canada and the United States have the most integrated bilateral aviation relationship in the world. The certification systems are supposed to be harmonized. When Transport Canada certifies a plane as safe, the FAA, which is the Federal Aviation Administration in the United States, recognizes that certification and vice versa. This system has worked for decades because both countries have world-class aviation safety standards. What Trump is threatening to do is essentially blow up that entire framework of cooperation. And if he does that, Canada could retaliate by refusing to recognize FAA certifications for American aircraft, which would ground American planes trying to operate in Canadian airspace or fly over Canada to reach destinations in Asia or Europe. This could spiral into a complete breakdown of North American aviation cooperation. Let's also talk about the economic impact beyond just Bombardier. General Dynamics, which owns Gulfstream, would seemingly benefit from reduced competition if Bombardier gets shut out of the American market. But it's not that simple. Gulfstream has suppliers and partners in Canada. The aerospace industry is deeply integrated across the border. Bombardier employs about 3,000 people in the United States at 9 different facilities. They're actively investing in expanding their American operations. If this trade war escalates, those American jobs are at risk. And then there's the broader issue of supply chains. Modern aircraft aren't built in one country. They're assembled from components manufactured all over the world. Disrupting the Canada-US aviation relationship could have ripple effects that hurt American aerospace companies just as much as Canadian ones. Politically, this is a massive gamble for Trump. His supporters love the tough talk on trade, and targeting Canada plays well with the America First base. But if flights actually get canceled, if regional airports lose service, if business travelers can't get to meetings, that's going to create immediate political pain. Republican senators from states that depend on regional air service are going to be getting angry calls from constituents. Democratic opponents are going to have a field day showing how Trump's reckless trade threats are disrupting ordinary Americans' lives. And remember, we're heading toward the 2026 midterm elections. Republicans cannot afford to look incompetent or to be blamed for economic chaos. Mark Carney, on the other hand, is in a tricky position. He can't be seen as capitulating to American bullying, or he'll look weak domestically. Canadian nationalism is a powerful political force, especially when it's directed against perceived American arrogance. But he also can't let the Canadian aerospace industry get destroyed for the sake of political posturing. Bombardier is a major employer in Quebec, which is a politically crucial province. If Carney doesn't find a way to de-escalate, he'll face pressure from business leaders, workers, and provincial governments. So both leaders are now in a situation where backing down looks weak, but escalating could trigger economic disaster. There's also a legal question that nobody seems to be able to answer. Does Trump actually have the authority to unilaterally decertify aircraft that have already been approved by the FAA? Aviation law experts are saying this is completely unprecedented. The FAA is responsible for aviation safety, not trade policy. Certifications are supposed to be based on technical safety standards, not political disputes. If Trump orders the FAA to revoke certifications for Canadian aircraft without any safety justification, that could be challenged in court. Airlines that own these planes could sue. Aircraft manufacturers could sue. This could turn into a massive legal battle that drags on for years. And in the meantime, the uncertainty alone is enough to paralyze the market. Let me give you some numbers to understand the scale here. There are 150 Bombardier Global Express aircraft currently registered and operating in the United States, flown by 115 different operators. These are mostly corporate jets owned by major companies and wealthy individuals. Each one of these aircraft is worth tens of millions of dollars. If they lose certification, they become essentially worthless in the US market. You can't sell them, you can't fly them, they're just extremely expensive scrap metal. Now multiply that by all the other Canadian-made aircraft operating in the US, and you're looking at potential losses in the tens of billions of dollars. This isn't small potatoes, this is a potential economic catastrophe for the aviation sector. And here's something that hasn't gotten enough attention. This isn't just about Canada and the United States. European aerospace giant Airbus manufactures their A220 commercial planes in Canada. Those are narrow-body jets used by airlines all over North America. If Trump's threat extends to all Canadian-made aircraft, that could affect Airbus, which is a European company. Are we about to see the European Union get dragged into this trade dispute? The EU has already been frustrated with Trump's unpredictable trade policy. If European companies start getting hurt by these Canadian aircraft tariffs, Brussels could retaliate with their own measures against American exports. This has the potential to explode into a transatlantic trade war. So what happens next? In the immediate term, over the next few days, watch for statements from the FAA, from Transport Canada, from the airlines, and from Bombardier. Everyone is trying to figure out if this is just Trump bluster that will blow over or if he's actually serious about implementing these threats. Canadian officials have said they're working to resolve the dispute, which suggests they're hoping to negotiate some kind of settlement. Maybe Canada agrees to certify the Gulfstream jets that Trump is upset about, and in exchange, Trump backs off the decertification threats. That would be the rational diplomatic solution that prevents catastrophe. But here's the problem. Trump has shown time and time again that he doesn't always take the rational diplomatic path. He governs through unpredictability. Sometimes he makes extreme threats and then backs off when he gets concessions. Sometimes he follows through just to prove he's serious. Nobody knows which version we're going to get this time. And that uncertainty is paralyzing. Airlines can't make long-term plans. Bombardier can't invest in new projects. Travelers don't know if their flights will be canceled. The entire industry is in limbo, waiting to see if the President of the United States is going to blow up North American aviation cooperation over a certification dispute about luxury jets. Let's zoom out and look at the bigger picture. This aircraft threat is part of a broader pattern where Trump is using tariffs and trade restrictions as his primary tool of foreign policy. He's threatened Mexico, he's threatened Europe, he's threatened China, and now he's escalating against Canada in multiple sectors simultaneously. Just in the past month, he's threatened 100% tariffs on Canadian goods over the China trade deal. He's made comments about Canada becoming the 51st state, and now he's threatening to ground thousands of aircraft. This is a level of trade aggression that goes way beyond normal diplomatic friction. This is economic warfare. And it's not clear what the endgame is. Does Trump actually want concessions on specific issues, or is this just about projecting dominance? Is there a rational set of demands that Canada could meet to de-escalate, or are we in a situation where Trump will keep moving the goalposts? Trade experts are genuinely confused about what American trade policy even is at this point. There's no coherent strategy that anyone can identify. It seems to be reactive, personality-driven, and motivated more by Trump's perception of whether other leaders are showing him sufficient respect than by any clear economic objectives. For American consumers and businesses, this chaos is a problem. Uncertainty is poison for economic planning. Companies can't invest when they don't know what the trade rules will be next month. Airlines can't buy aircraft when they don't know if those planes will be certified. And all of this instability has real costs. Stock markets hate uncertainty. The volatility we're seeing in aerospace stocks is spreading to broader market indices. If investors start to believe that Trump's trade wars are going to drag down economic growth, we could see significant market corrections. Here's what you need to watch for over the coming days and weeks. First, does the FAA issue any formal guidance about the status of Canadian aircraft certifications? If they stay silent, that's probably a good sign that cooler heads are prevailing. If they start making moves to actually revoke certifications, that's when you know we're headed for crisis. Second, watch for statements from American Airlines, Delta, and other carriers that operate Canadian-made aircraft. If they start quietly moving planes around or canceling routes, that tells you they're preparing for the worst. Third, pay attention to negotiations between US and Canadian officials. If there's a diplomatic resolution happening behind the scenes, we might see joint statements or announcements that walk back the threats. But also be prepared for the possibility that this spirals. Trump has a history of doubling down when challenged. If Carney refuses to back down, Trump might feel politically compelled to follow through just to avoid looking weak. And then we're in completely uncharted territory. Grounding thousands of aircraft would be unprecedented, the legal battles would be massive, the economic disruption would be severe, and the damage to US-Canada relations could take years to repair. These are two countries that have been allies for generations, that share the world's longest undefended border, that have integrated economies and societies. The idea that a dispute over business jet certifications could tear that relationship apart is absurd, but that's where we are right now. Let me be clear about what I'm not saying. I'm not saying that Trump is definitely going to implement these threats. History suggests that a lot of his most extreme trade threats end up being negotiating tactics that get walked back. But I am saying that the uncertainty itself is damaging, that the threats are real enough to crater stock prices and panic industries, and that there's a non-zero chance this could actually happen. And if it does happen, the consequences would be severe not just for Canada and aviation companies, but for regular Americans who depend on air travel, for businesses that depend on just-in-time supply chains, and for the broader economy that depends on stable, predictable trade relationships. This is also a reminder of how interconnected the modern economy is. You can't just wave a magic wand and untangle decades of economic integration. Canadian and American aviation are joined at the hip. Trying to separate them through tariffs and desertification is like trying to perform surgery with a chainsaw. It's messy, it's destructive, and it's going to hurt everyone involved. The rational approach would be to use existing diplomatic channels to resolve the Gulf Stream certification issue quietly without threatening to blow up the entire bilateral aviation relationship. But we're not living in a rational moment. We're living in an era where trade policy is made via social media posts, where threats are issued without apparent consultation with experts or allies, and where nobody knows what's coming next. So here's the bottom line. We are potentially hours or days away from a decision that could ground over 5,000 aircraft, disrupt millions of travelers, crater airline stocks, destroy tens of billions in aircraft value, and fundamentally damage the US-Canada relationship. Or we could see a quick diplomatic resolution where both sides claim victory and move on. Nobody knows which path we're on. And that uncertainty, that unpredictability, is itself a major problem for economic stability and international cooperation. All we can do is watch, wait, and hope that cooler heads prevail before this situation spirals completely out of control. I'll be covering this story as it develops, so make sure you're subscribed to Capital Pulse and have notifications turned on. Drop a comment below with your thoughts. Do you think Trump is bluffing, or is he serious about grounding Canadian aircraft? How would flight cancellations affect you personally? And do you think Canada should stand firm or compromise to avoid economic damage? I read every comment, and your perspectives help shape how we cover these stories. Hit that like button if you found this analysis valuable, and I'll see you in the next video as this situation continues to unfold. Stay informed, and we'll talk soon.